Unity, oneness of minds, feelings as among a number of persons, harmony, concord, and agreements. Hello, I'm Ernest Lowery. Welcome to the podcast Unity, a place where you can come together and understand what's happening in your community. What does the community want? It wants great schools, it wants to be self-sustaining, and it wants to take crime out the neighborhoods. Come join us at Podcast Unity. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Podcast Unity program. I'm your host, Ernest Lowery, and I'm gracious enough today to have a beautiful resident of Hawaii here today, Miss Rashawn Forrest. Welcome aboard. How are you?
How are you? Thank you for having me.
Well, that is great. So tell me, you obviously living in Hawaii, so your parents were military, your dad or mom, and tell me a little bit about that.
My father was in the Army. He did his full term, did it. He was in it before I was born, and all through while I was in school. And I want to say he's been retired probably 15 years now, just as long as almost I've been graduated from school. But then he still served his country after he did contracting work with the military. And then he's still serving his country. Okay. Every election that we've had, he's volunteered.
Right, great.
And then he was working for the Postal Service. But now he's sitting back, relaxing, enjoying life.
Okay, so how long did you stay in Hawaii before you came back to the mainland, as they say?
Just about 2 years, because I have a younger brother. He's a year and 51 weeks younger than me. His birthday's the week before mine.
Okay.
And so we were there about at least 2 years.
Okay, so you didn't get a chance to interact with the people that much at all?
No, not that I remember.
Right.
My mother and my father have more memories than I do, but I had the blessing and the privilege of going back in 2016 for the first time in January and in November to celebrate my 30th birthday.
Okay, great. So one of the things we want to kind of dive into is we want to talk about spina bifida. But maybe before we get all the way into that, tell me some of the things that you like to do.
I have my BA in broadcast journalism from Howard University. So I do like to do video production. I like to go out and film footage and come back and edit. I can sit in front of a computer for 30 hours. I have sat in front of a computer for 30 hours on end. And I like listening to music. I like eating. I like cooking. And I've tried to incorporate all of those things into what I want to do to make money for myself.
Right.
I just started, it'll be 2 years in August that I started a candle business. And I do other creative things like make T-shirts. I've made masks with the pandemic going on. And I haven't been sleeping too good through the night this year. But out of that, I just came up with relaxing sprays that I will be pushing out there soon.
So you keep yourself quite busy.
I try to.
What about on the social scale, as far as acting with other groups, people maybe in your age group?
I really don't, because I'm working or I'm sleeping. But the most I interact with my peers is at church. There are some ladies that are I'm on the media ministry, and there's some ladies that are around my age that we all are on the ministry together and we work together. So that's the only interaction I have with my peers. I mean, my coworkers that I work with. I work for Life Touch, and that's another way I interact with my peers or people my age.
Okay, so then what happened at Howard? I mean, were you online studying?
No,
what?
I was in the books. If I was not studying, I was watching TV. I was honing in on my craft, or trying to do try to enjoy DC. I love DC. Because my father, after we left Hawaii, we moved to for Belleville, which is about 15, 20 minutes outside of D.C. And so going back to the area was a blessing to do that and to go to the church that I went to when I was a little girl and happened to go back to that church as a young adult. It was a blessing as well, Ebenezer AME Church in Fort Washington, Maryland. And I was active in the media ministry. I was in the college fam ministry there. And the thing that I do is I help out with media, all things media, for all the churches that I've been to, that I have worshipped at.
Right.
At my church in New York, Riverview Missionary Baptist Church, I started their Facebook page in 2014, and when I came down here, almost 6 years ago, I sat in the back of the church for about the first year or so, and after about a year or so, I joined the media ministry, and I've been heavily doing that every Sunday that we've been open. We just reopened this past Sunday, and I wasn't able to be there. I was in New York, but I can't wait to go back.
All right. Well, fantastic. Now, is it proper to say that spina bifida is a disease, or how do you describe that?
I've always described it, I guess because it was described to me as a birth defect. It means split spine. When I was born, my spine was not fully developed, and I had a bubble on my back. That was the first time that anybody in my family, well, my mother and my father, had heard about it. My grandmother, she was a nurse for 41 years, so she knew something about it, but not personally, like dealing and knowing and loving and caring for me. My mother and my father, they didn't know until I was born, until I came out the womb, that they would be facing this challenge that has become a blessing and a miracle.
So you use the word challenge. So at what point in time did you know you had a challenge? Did you understand your situation?
So throughout my life, even now, I have no bladder, I have no bowel control, so I do have accidents. That was really hard growing up, having accidents and kids making fun of me or wearing pull-ups at the time, but they looked like, because back then they looked like diapers, and people would tease me saying I looked like I'm wearing a diaper, and but I wasn't. I was wearing a pull-up, I guess close enough. But and then having an accident, if I did have an accident, and going to change, and people asking me why did I change, and I do cath myself about 5 times a day, so it takes me a little longer to go to the bathroom. And people asking me, I can remember one time we went to a Knicks game with a school group that I was in high school. I came back, and a friend of mine said, "Did you fall in?" I said, "No, I don't know what I said. I think I just laughed it off. I didn't give her an answer. Because back then I was still shy about it, still felt like I was the only person in the whole wide world that had it, but I know I wasn't. I just didn't know anybody else in the world that had it. And then when I was about 18 years old, Boris Kojo and Nicole Ari Parker, they had a daughter named Sophie. She just celebrated her 17th birthday. And they announced that she had spina bifida. And I was like, oh, there's somebody else that's like me, and that I could put a face to it. I mean, I do belong to some groups on Facebook and on social media, and usually you see people that are wheelchair bound, because it does affect some people's lower extremities, and that's whose stories you see the most. You don't see the stories of the able-bodied people that much, and that's what I want to change with my life, because we still do struggle, even though we can walk. We still have other struggles that we deal with, and sometimes for me it's mostly mental, that like I felt like I was all alone for most of my life. Sometimes I still feel like I'm alone.
So, at one point in your life, when you were in the hospital, and of course they already understood your diagnosis, the doctor said that you won't be able to walk. So, how did that come about?
So when I was born, and my parents were talking to the doctors, excuse me, they told them that I wouldn't walk, I wouldn't talk, I would be mentally challenged. And I guess that was scary for them because they didn't expect that from their child because they walk, they talk, they went to school, they were in the military. So they are mentally sound. And to just have that challenge of dealing with a child that may not be mentally sound, that might not be able to get around on her own. I guess that was scary for them. But like my brother always says, God has the last say. Man says one thing, God has the last say.
Right. So, when we think about these things, and particularly when people are looking at you a certain kind of way, even if they don't understand what's going on, I mean, how do you basically cope with that?
I just become more public with my spina bifida. In 2015, I produced a documentary about my life of being born with spina bifida. I interviewed my mother, my father, and my brother of their experience living and loving me and seeing me go through living with spina bifida. And then I talked about some of my challenges and some of the things that I have accomplished despite my spina bifida. Because like I said, they said I wouldn't walk, I wouldn't talk, I wouldn't be mentally challenged. And I spoke earlier that I graduated from Howard University. So, which I became aware of because of my spina bifida, having my father been in the military. The hospital that I went to often was Walter Reed, and it used to be located up the street from Howard University. In 1995, I got really sick. For the time I could remember me getting really sick. Was having seizures, throwing up, having headaches, and I didn't know what was going on. I guess my mother had some idea what was going on, and then at the time we were living in New York, and the doctors there didn't know what was going on. So we went down to Walter Reed, and they told her that my shunt had...
That's something coming from your head into your chest cavity.
Yes. Actually, mine goes all the way down to my abdomen.
Okay.
So I have the shunt because I also have hydrocephalus, which is water on the brain. And I was getting taller, and I had a child length shunt in, so I got surgery to have an adult one installed. And when I went back to get my stitches taken out, because I had all my hair shaved, went to go back, and after I went to go get my stitches taken out, a friend of the family drove us down Georgia Avenue, said that's Howard University. I went back as going into the second grade, saying I'm going to Howard University, and that's the only school, like I said, I applied to, only school I ever wanted to go to, and I accomplished it.
Okay, so Rashawn, hold that thought, and we're going to be right back in just a few minutes with podcast Unity. We'll be right back.
Words, journal, and guide.
Okay, welcome back to the second half of Podcast Unity. Your host, Ernest Lowery, and we're here with Rashawn Forrest, and we're talking about a variety of things that has to her. She was diagnosed with spina bifida, and so on the other side, we talked about those particular things that she was having, issues that she was having with spina bifida. So you want to continue on to say a little bit more about your condition, because one of the things we did talk about the shunt that's going down to your, from your head right down to your stomach, and you had to get that cut, and the spina bifida, and with being a waterhead person is what they call it, I guess. That's how you describe that.
So I said, so I was born with 3 different things: the spina bifida, and the 2 other things are, I guess, a cause of the spina bifida: hydrocephalus, which is water on the brain, and club feet. When I was born, my feet were turned in. So I had all those corrected at birth. The spine was corrected. They did a shunt initially, and then they corrected the feet.
Okay, so did your parents ever tell you, because you say you did a documentary, and in the process of that documentary, are those some of the things that you talked about with your parents, how they felt about those surgeries that you had to have and what your chances were, on top of knowing that they said that you, excuse me, that you probably wouldn't be able to walk?
Yeah. So my father talks about me when I took my first steps. Having heard that I wasn't going to walk, he talks about how when I took my first steps, how just he was so elated and how a blessing it was. And as far as my mother's faith goes, she says that when being born with me and going through the challenges that I went through, and then seeing me coming out of those challenges or living through those challenges, is that her relationship with God got closer because of my birth and just caring and loving me. My brother, he said that knowing me and seeing me grow up and seeing everything that I do that I wasn't supposed to do, he said that there's visceral proof that there is a God, because they said that I wouldn't do this, that I wouldn't do that, and I did everything. The only thing that I held up on doing, but not because of lack of being able to do, I just got my license at the age of 30.
Okay.
But I think that the first time that I was driving with my mother in my own car, I think that she had to sit back and take it all in, because she couldn't believe that this was happening because of what she was told some 30-odd years ago, that I wouldn't walk, talk, and here I am driving a car. Sometimes I sit back and I'm like, I can't believe I'm doing it as well, knowing that I am doing it, but I'm still in awe of it.
That's fantastic.
And
well, you say you're in these support groups online. Because of your condition, I guess, and you said that there are 2 other things that preceded or that was involved with your birth, and they had to correct. So when you talk to people online about how y'all are, or I guess, what is it that you talk about most, and what is the reaction to the people in general? If I could phrase that correctly.
I really don't talk about my experience online too much with other people that were born that have spina bifida. I read their experiences and what they have to go through. I'm just like, wow, I can't believe they're going through this, they're going through that. And then seeing what they go through and seeing what I go through, it's just like, because it is also called the snowflake disease or birth defect, because no one person that has spina bifida, none of us have the same experience. Like I said, some people can walk, some can't. Some people can walk, but they have to have the aid of something to walk with. That was my life early on, and but I grew out of that.
Right, that's great. It looked great. So you have segued from that particular part of your life, as you got older, you're coping better. You've done a documentary.
Yes.
You've been on like BET. Is that correct? Was that BET?
Well, yeah,
or?
I worked on BT.
Okay, and so is there a book in the making, or you've written a book already? What's that about?
I just wrote a book. It was released in August of last year. It came about from my documentary. I initially did my documentary in 2015 to celebrate the 20 years that I, to my recollection, got sick really bad. And then in 2017, I updated the documentary. And one of my old pastors, Reverend Willie L. Hardin, may he rest in peace, he saw the documentary and he said that this could be a book. I was like, I don't see it, but okay. And last year around this time, I was listening to the radio, and A.J. Joyner was on there, and how he was talking about how anybody can write a book. You have something written down, you have the videos, you have the footage, you have pictures. And I was like, yep, I have it written down, I have the pictures, I have the video. I guess I can. I guess this is.
Yes, of course.
I already had the title. The documentary was called Life in the Daylight. So that is the name of the book, Life in the Daylight. Mm-hmm. And it talks about, it's life in the daylight, seeing life's challenges differently. And in the book, I talk about the story in the Bible that helped me accept my birth defect. I didn't always accept my birth defect. About 12 years old, I was about 12 years old when I started to accept it. There was a preacher that came to my church in New York, and that was her sermon, the scripture that she used for her sermon. I don't remember her sermon title. I don't remember what she talked about. Mm-hmm. I just remember that she came from John 9, and that's the story of when Jesus healed the blind man. And I talked about how that story, how I interpreted the story based on my life in 2016 at a prayer breakfast at my church in New York. And from me speaking in 2016 and then the documentary, that's all encompassed into, and it turned into my book that I released last year.
Okay, Rashawn, so what's next for you?
What's next for me is increasing my candle business, daylight candles, my custom design business, daylight custom designs, and the relaxing sprays that I spoke on to let people sleep peacefully.
Okay, so these candles, they're scented, I would imagine?
They are scented. You can get them custom made. I'm in transition right now, so I am hiatus on making the candles, but you can always get T-shirts. You can still get the book. The book is still available, so I'm available on Amazon, and if you hit me up on social media, mm-hmm. I'm on all platforms. I'm on Facebook mostly and Instagram. And if you hit me up, you can get a signed copy from me, or you can go, if you don't want a signed copy, you get yours from Amazon. And then you can, to go along with the book, I do have apparel. Mm-hmm. Hashtag life in the daylight. You can get a custom made. You live life in the daylight because of, or despite. I have a shirt that says, I live life in the daylight despite having spina bifida. And I just have a simple Life in the Daylight T-shirts.
Okay. So I'm looking at you and how you're dressed. Is there any significance to your style?
Kind of. The color for spina bifida awareness is yellow.
Okay.
And purple has always been one of my favorite colors because it represents royalty. My father always called me his princess, so even though he calls me his princess, I am his princess, but now that I'm an adult, I do see myself and recognize that I am a queen, so I like wearing purple. And growing up, I was a Laker fan. I was a huge Kobe fan, so purple and yellow have been a part of my life for a very long time. The meanings have changed over the years, but I like yellow so much. My car is even yellow.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Well, Ms. Rashawn, you've been such a blessing. Is there anything in particular that you would like to leave the audience?
No matter what you go through in life, you can make it through. You live life in the daylight despite your challenges, and to know how to do that, get my book.
And the name of the book again is?
It's Life in the Daylight.
Okay, so we've been here and having a conversation with Rashawn Forrest, and I appreciate you very much for coming out here and taking time and fellowshipping with us. It's been a great interview. So please come back and see us again.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so this ends this episode of Podcast Unity. I'm your host, Ernest Lowery. Thanks for watching. See us next time. Peace out.